All right. So, good morning or good afternoon. So,
Hello.
this is our second to the last, or possibly third to the last session in this series, and we're going to talk about lists today, project lists, quality checklists, issue logs, and lessons learned. All right. So, um, when I was um, when I was preparing for the PMP exam, there was one question regarding the most important tool, the best tool for quality management. I thought it would be some like sophisticated software or some complicated process. It turns out the best tool for quality management is actually just the checklist. And from my experience in the past years of doing projects, this is true that this simple tool is really valuable in terms of ensuring the quality of a project. But you don't need a quality checklist for all your projects. So the question is, when should you use this tool? So for me, it's just a matter of looking at your project schedule and seeing whether there is a convergence of activities in a specific week or day. For instance, this is very common for events. So in events, so it's a kind of project where everything converges into a day or series of days. And for that, if you don't have a tool to help you check the quality during those days, you will be overwhelmed. So the project quality checklist is simply a way to ensure comprehensiveness of your of the preparation for that part of the project. So this is in contrast with the other tools we discussed. For instance, we discussed the the work data structure, and we use tags there to determine and to focus on the most critical tasks because we want to focus on those. In the risk breakdown structure, we created a risk register in order to score our risks in terms of probability and impact so that we could focus on the highest scoring risks. For the quality checklist, it's more of comprehensiveness so that we ensure that everything that needs to be done to prepare for that part of the project is complete. So for us to create a quality checklist is really, well, we already made the documents that would help this creation easy. So for instance, we could look at our WBS and see which work packages needs to be checked at a specific moment and by whom. We could also use our risk register, again, looking at the biggest risks and seeing which ones do we want to check at specific points of the project. And we could also use our communications plan to ask ourselves the same questions. And maybe to make this more concrete, we could take a look at this from the perspective of managing our teammates in the project through this quality checklist. So what I normally do is I create one checklist with the owner of a deliverable or a set of deliverables, set of work packages. So for a specific instance in the project, and then I schedule a review. So we look at our WBS and then we look at, okay, so if we have several team members there, we tag those work packages with their names. So we can just simply filter the WBS with the owners of those of that work of that what you call this of the work packages, and then we could sit down with them like let's create a checklist for you for this the day before the event. So what do you need to do the day before the event? So how could I help you in doing or executing your part of the project? And then we just simply schedule that. So in Rome, it's simply a matter of tagging the day that will happen. So on that day, so okay, let's have that meeting and review our checklist. And then we could schedule when to check the completion as well. So right before the event, then everything has to be ready. So we could schedule that as well with the teammate of ours who is in charge of that. If the teammate is actually ourselves, that's also helpful. We could check whether we have done our work during that day. So these examples are from a project where my teammates were not, or the environment was more offline. We were organizing an event. We invited a professor to a university, and I was a project manager in preparing for that event. So in this case, we used paper. We printed out the quality checklists. So now in the age of the pandemic and in Zoom, so you could use your usual project tools like if they are not in Rome, this could be as simple as a Excel, a Google Sheet, or you could use like Asana, Trello. All these have checklists. So, but this is old school. This is printed piece of paper. Let's see, it's still loading. So this is from a teammate named Elsie, and we sat down and said, okay, this is what we need that needs to be done. So I gave her a copy, and then she was bringing that copy until the day of the event, and then in the morning, I think we have okay. In the morning of the event, we went through this. Okay, is everything ready? Okay, so good. And then yeah, I made checklists for each of my teammates, or at least the ones with the critical job during that day. Jojo has one as well, but this one is shorter. So Elsie was really the one which had a lot on her plate for this project. So this one is, I find, is a good way to manage people because they know exactly what they need to do on what day. So things are clear, and you make this with them, so it's already aligned with them. So that's basically the checklist. Any questions regarding this, Bruno?
I was wondering if the checklist is directly issued from the, for example, from the work breakdown structure. So one item in the checklist equal one task, or if it's more granular, or let's say if somebody is in charge of arranging the setup of the table, okay, this imply stage setup, audio setup, level setup. It's assumed that tables and chairs will be there. So it will not appear in the work breakout.
It really depends on you.
In the work package, it will be just set up the press conference room. So where do you keep the items between two projects? Because this is going to happen again, the press conference.
Mm-hmm. No, this is this in this particular case, we actually had documents documenting the actual arrangements. So actually the actual layout and all these things. So I don't remember I could look at my WBS, but it's some there. But it depends on you. So whatever will help you and whatever will help your teammates. If you feel that going detailed is helpful, then you do that. If you feel that it will help your future self to do this project, then go ahead and do that. So it's up to you.
Yeah, what I mean is that implicitly you are referring to some documentation or some conventions, and those are not part of the project as I can see it now.
Yeah.
So if it was a project that I was managing, I would be willing to add this documentation as well.
Yep. In this
Uh,
case, yeah. In this case, I remember having a layout. We did a layout of the room, and also, I mean,
yes,
you have to also consider the backgrounds of the people you're working with. So if they're experts in
absolutely.
actually doing this, so you just give them, okay, this
Yes,
one, to set up the room. So that person is like, that's their job. That they know what it means. But if you, it depends also on the risk. Like if this was a big event, so and it was
mm,
international. So that's why we went through the like all these details. But if it were like a small event, it's just like, okay, is everything okay? All right, so that's it. So it depends. It really depends on the situation. Depends on you as well as project manager. How much work,
absolutely.
yeah, how much work you want to put into this being you know very detailed. And yeah.
I think the checklist is the visible part of the process, but behind the checklist, it's assumed that you know how qualified the people are to do the job, and so you shrink or extend the checklist depending on their expertise
Mhm.
and supporting documents so that the checklist can stay small because there is a supporting document there somewhere that says in detail what each item means.
Yep, yep. Yeah, that's why you want competent teammates, because it's lessons your work as a project manager.
Yes.
Cool. um shall we proceed with the issue log?
Yeah.
Okay, so the second list we're discussing here is the issue log. And well, projects, you will always have problems and issues in projects, but similar to getting things done. So the idea in getting things done is that you you let yourself rest easy, because you have written down what you need to do in some place. In a it's a reliable system of documenting what needs to be done. So in this case, so you let yourself rest, you let your mind rest from your problems by having a reliable way of documenting them and only thinking about them when the time comes when you could actually do something about them. That's normally when you talk to your teammates who own those issues. So you could either log these issues as needed, and or you could include them in your meetings. So in meetings, issues come up and then you log them, or they just come up during the day. You get an email, you get an instant message, and you want to log them. Again, similar to the quality checklist, you want to ask yourself whether this is worth doing. Of course, this is additional work in your part as a project manager. Um, so again, bigger projects require, or more riskier projects require, or you want to add more tools there to ensure that the project is taken care of. So in this case, you want to take care of the issues. So in Rome, if you're going to do this in Rome, this is simply placing the right tags there. So my suggested tags, if you do this in the daily pages, is that, of course, you put there the tag of the issue log, you put there the project name, the issue owner, the categories of the issues, what kind of issue is this? So to help your future self, if you want to review the project, you have categories. Um, if you want to discuss with people, you have different categories. Is this when we're tackling this particular aspect of the WBS, procurement? So what are the problems in procurement? So it's easy to go through those things just by simply filtering or doing a query. The categories could be based on your main branches of your WBS or RBS. It's a quick way of creating categories. You'd also want to place the status of the issue, whether it's an open issue, or the issue is already closed. And then, optional is also key dates. The key dates, so it will appear on certain days that you tag, or you could include other people involved, so that when you do your one-on-one with them, you could just click their names and you could see in the link references the different things you want to discuss with them, including the issues that are open, which involve them. So, and then, yeah, if you are, so this issue log, I want this to be visible to everyone. So if I'm working with people who are not familiar with Chrome, I normally use a spreadsheet now, so that this is visible to everyone. Um, yeah. So do you have questions regarding the issue log, Bruno, or any inputs regarding it?
Mm, I tend to think that if you are just yourself in the project, Rome is good enough. But if you have multiple people, then you really need a software to do it.
Yep.
Spreadsheets, that's what we were using in the 90s, but we have better tools today for that.
Yeah, actually.
Because you need everybody, you need to have a workflow for each issue. When you say the issue status, you need to have a list of status so that you are sure that people are not moving in the wrong status. And also you need a discussion on each issue. Very often the issues are going back and forth because people don't understand them, or they think it's not their business, so they will not address them. And you need a way to discuss down to the issue level. From my experience. Now, I have a more strategic question, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
How comes there are issues?
Because
if the project is well defined in theory, I just say in theory, not in practice, the work breakout structure and the risk breakout structure are sufficient. Everything has been thought before.
Well, that's
so. Why do we have issues?
That's the key thing. Like the everything there is a false assumption, because it's impossible to think about everything. It minimizes, the possible issues, but you have to be omniscient to know everything that will happen in the future in that project. So the bigger the project, the more things you could not anticipate. So there will be issues. It's inevitable. It's like I've never seen a project that is actually like there are no issues. And also right now, like, going back to our discussion about um, designing serendipity, I updated the title chapter. Does it sound better? Designing serendipity versus fabricating luck.
Yeah.
So
I tend to think that the issue log is the gray area part of the project management. If you are in Agile, for example, the issue log is the backlog, and everything starts from there. So it means you just drop the work the WBS, the RBS, the everything else, and you just keep the issue log and you think that it's good enough. If you are doing project management and you have been planning ahead, every entry in the issue log should be questioned as to why it appeared, in my opinion.
That
So
is
there
correct.
should be somewhere in your list an entry of what was the root cause of this issue to exist, to appear, to not having been planned.
That is correct. I forgot about that.
That's my opinion. I'm not just a pointer to the root cause, not the analysis, because the analysis will be in the lesson learned.
Mhm.
But a pointer to it. Why did this issue appear?
Yeah.
It could be because the person in charge of these parts didn't have the competencies, because there was not enough time, because there was you see, just a short mention of why this issue is there.
Mhm.
So that when you track the project, you can start to see how many issues are coming back, how many causes are coming back. And you can forecast the project. Because if the issue log is growing too much, you are going to miss the end of the project.
Yep. You have to attack the cause. Yeah. You have to attack the cause of the
It will
issues.
end.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, that's
So
a good point. Yeah.
that's my experience on issue log. I mean, it can be, if it's inflating too much, somewhere there is a big risk on the project.
In your experience, Bruno, is this for software?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only experience I have, to be honest.
Mhm. I mean, me, I haven't done any software project management, so it's like it's a different world for me.
Yeah, well, that's it's a big weakness of software, is that very often it's by doing things that you uncover problems. When you plan from outside, a task looks like it's easy. And then when you get into the task, you uncover that it's not so easy, because very often it's because the tools are not up to the task, or because the people don't have enough knowledge to do it.
That's why Agile was invented.
And in the end, what you have is that the issue log is blowing up. And the project is finished for already 3 months, but the issue log is still there, and you are still working on the project. And you don't have project management anymore, because the project is done. You just have a list of issues.
The bugs become features, undocumented features.
Not always. It could be that things are just harder than you expected. Happens all the time.
Yep.
It could be you have planned to do a feature, and when you release the feature, it's too slow. So the project is done, the feature is released, but it's too slow. So you cannot leave it like this. You have to fix it.
Yep.
It's not really a bug. It's not really something missing. It's just something which is not adequate.
That's correct. Cool. So how do you normally fix that? You do another project, or you just assign it as a part of the ongoing support or operation?
It depends if it's a project for you, if you are the owner of the project, and the team is, I mean, it's a never-ending project. So that's one case. If it's for a customer, you try to do a divide and conquer approach. You sit with the customer and you say, okay, we have these issues. Now we have to list half of them we will do, and half of them we will not do. So you have to choose which one you abandon.
Mm,
as part of this project. And if when we say abandon means we could move it to a secondary project for which we will give a code, for which we will ask money, maybe next year, and we will process again. That usually works rather well because customers are not silly. And then the discussion is what stay on the list and what moves on the other list.
yeah.
And you try to reduce to something that you can manage, and you create a new work package, and you put this issue list in the work package, and you re-enter project mode.
Okay. Good. All right. So let's go
That's how
to
I do it. Maybe other
yeah,
people do
makes
that.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and people have their own styles of managing. They have their own tools, and yeah, this is really just an exchange of experiences.
Yeah.
So let's go to lessons learned.
Yes.
So for me, lessons learned is really just a favor you're doing your future self because you're documenting lessons so that you don't repeat them in the future. At least when you do a project in the future, you have a reference of what you actually learned in that project. I don't know. I don't know if there's an actual Chinese adage, but I've heard that there's a saying that the worst ink is better than the best memory. So here, at some point, you will forget what you learned from a project. So documenting it just helps your future self. For me, there are like two occasions where I do this. One is the team meeting. So we just include it in the agenda. And it's like, hey, so what did you learn last week? What could we document? And in Rome, if you're using Rome for this, so it's just a matter of again tagging them, so it's easier for your future self to query or to filter these projects or to search for them. And yeah, and the tags I suggest is, for instance, of course the page related to the lessons learned. The If you do that in your daily pages, if you do this in your project lessons learned page, you probably want to add the date itself when you added it. You want the project name, the contributors, and the categories. Again, similar to your issue log, it could be based on your branches of your WPS or RBS. And then really asking yourself, your future self, they will be looking for they will be searching for this. What would help them? What keyword would help them discover this answer? In what situation would you want this to appear to them? So that's a team meeting. Another way to do this is to schedule a workshop with your team that you will lead. In pre-pandemic times, I used to do this with manila paper and post-its. So manila paper, I would just place there the the categories so that this will help my teammates think about what were the things we learned in this category, in this other category, and I just post its there, and my work will just be um, to summarize and document those lessons learned, shared by my teammates. So in this world now where we're always in Zoom, so this probably I haven't done this yet for this for any project. So, but it makes sense to do it in breakout rooms, perhaps. Just give a guide to your teammates, maybe categories. You could use collaborative software to do this, to list down things. Even something as simple as a Google Doc with some questions there that could work. Some guide questions I normally use is like, what surprised you in this project? So this is my sort of my favorite question when it comes to this, and even interviewing other project managers when they start a new project. So it's like, what surprised you? Because if it surprised you, it will probably surprise me. It's something we don't expect. Also, what are the best things about this project? And then, at least here in the culture I work in, so people are so hesitant to give negative feedback. So we have to couch the question in softer language, like, what should be prioritized for improvement in this project, or what should we avoid doing the next time we do the similar project. And it's important to know your teammates, because sometimes it's better to just do a one-on-one with people rather than waste time in a workshop where people will end up blaming each other. So sometimes you have a project team like that, so you just live with it and try to see what's the best solution, and that could be to have one-on-ones instead of a team meeting. And then, well, the key thing here is really to make use of these lessons learned. So the key habit is to start a project by reviewing lessons learned. This doesn't limit your, I mean, you shouldn't limit yourself to just your own lessons learned. You could interview other project managers who have done a similar project in the past, or simply Google lessons learned for this particular kind of project, and you might find solutions to that, or you might find what you call this. Um, you might find. So sometimes I mean, you have to know your project team. Sometimes the situation is that it's better to do one-on-ones instead of doing a workshop, because people might just end up blaming each other. The relationships are toxic. So you're the objective here is to get lessons learned. So maybe it's another area of work to actually fix relationships if needed. So yeah, it's just a matter of knowing what channel to use to get the best lessons learned. And of course, a key habit is to get help by your past self by reviewing your project lessons learned when you start a project. And this is, this doesn't mean that you limit yourself to your own lessons learned. You could always interview project managers who have done a similar project in the past, and also you could Google lessons learned from you know public documents which have documented their what they learned from a project. And one thing I normally do is like, or maybe not normally, but like for my recent project I did, is to give a talk about the project management lessons learned for the project. Because that one, I'm forced to actually think about what are the things that we learned from this project, and then I have a document where I could just watch. In the future, I have a video of myself explaining, and my future self could benefit from that if I'm gonna do another project like that in the future. And yeah, so one aspect here as well is like this idea of building in public, working with the garage door open. So if you share your lessons learned, your issue log, you will be in public. There's a chance that you could get help from people in your group. There's a chance that somebody could see a collaboration with you because of the same problems you're facing. So yeah, so that's another angle to this, to make this a public document. So that's it. Any questions or inputs, Bruno?
On the lesson learned, if you go back above at the very beginning of the page, I think you have two places of input. For me, the lesson learned is mostly to document what worked well. So capture what has been uncovered during the project and can be reused. So that's one thing. The other thing is to capture what didn't work well and to take a little bit of time to understand why it didn't work well. So that's the time where you are going to do the root cause analysis of the issue log. So you go back in the issue log and you look which one have been especially painful and what could have been done better to avoid first that the issue appear and that the issue costs so much. Because that's usually where sorry for interruption.
Yeah.
It's a holiday today and it's very rainy. So it means all the children are behind the TV and the TV is on internet, of course. So it means is very bad. So that's from now you have a similar route, a similar source of good lesson learned in the checklist, in the quality check that you have at the beginning. You have two questions to ask. How comes we had a failure in quality? So you have the checklist, you could have the checklist, but still you have the error because the checklist is only a reminder of an existing competency. Let's say if you need to set the table and the chairs, you need at least some knowledge on how to do it. If you don't have the knowledge, means somewhere you did not assess properly the team. You didn't recruit the proper team. Or you did not provide them with opportunities to increase their knowledge. So there is some kind of missing brick in the project construction, and it's important to locate it and to identify it. Okay? Or another possibility is that your checklist was not good enough. And so you have not been able to detect quality problems early enough. Let's say I'm using, let's use the software business. I'm using a library that is available on internet. And I assume that with this library, I will be able to do this job. But there was no time allocated to test the library up front. And there was no guarantee that we could get access to somebody to support us on this library. Or we had too much expectation on this library, which is not done for that. So that means that in my future project, I must put a work package for assessing the library that are going to be used and which are critical. So that's the kind of feedback you can get also from the quality and put back into the lesson learned. Now, the big problem of lesson learned is that it's extremely partial. It ends up as being pieces of knowledge which are very isolated. You have a little piece here, you have a little piece here, you have a little piece here. It doesn't make a book. So that's where systems like wikis or Rome now can help is that it helps to merge the incremental knowledge back into a larger corpus of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's one of the big benefit of this kind of tools.
Definitely. I wonder though, because like who's the user of the knowledge? I mean, in your experience.
The next project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it the project manager or the entire team who goes through the lessons learned?
Everybody.
So the lessons learned, yeah, that includes the technical lessons learned as well, I imagine, no? When you're
Of
discussing
course,
the wiki.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, of course. But very often the knowledge that appear in such case is at the edge. You see the places where two people in the team didn't have enough knowledge to communicate properly the task.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be the project manager who don't understand enough of the real job to be done, and so his planning was not adequate.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a time where you have a task which depends on another task, and the two people didn't understand properly where let's take the example of
Hello, Bruno, are you there?
sorry, let's take the example of the conference. You
Mm-hmm.
have the speaker know how to use the microphone. You have the person who is arranging the room, he must prepare this microphone. And you have the technician who is going to record the session, and he know how works the microphone. So each of them must share knowledge with the other so that there is a common practice, a common procedure being set up where each of them recognize their request and explain to the other in words they can use. So let's say for the person who is going to organize the room, it could be make sure there is a microphone, make sure the batteries are filled, make sure the microphone is at the left of the speaker, and that's all.
Mm-hmm.
If the microphone doesn't work because it's not recognized by the recording system, now we know that it's not the responsibility of the person who has to arrange the room. That was not his job.
Okay. Yeah, and well, this one is really like in my experience, it's people don't utilize lessons learned enough. It's again, maybe it's just like a cultural thing in the environment I work in. So my lessons learned has mostly been personal because maybe I don't know, people are too busy or whatever. So there's it's not just the documentation that's important, but the actual culture of using it and the habit of using it. So anyway, that's the main challenge I've encountered in project lessons learned in my own experience.
Yeah, normally, if you go back to the quality, I would say that any request for quality which is not sitting on a written document explaining how to achieve this level of quality is impossible to achieve. It is basically void.
Yeah, that is applicable for contracts, because like you want everything to be documented. So in many cases, the project is governed by relationships. So meaning it's not the black and white which is dictating the success. Is the subjective um, perception of the customer. So that's
Yes, of course there is this. It's a little bit gray. It's not black and white. But your goal as a business is to make it the more and more white and more predictable.
yeah. But well,
So
again, so this there's a lot of trade-offs in terms of work and effort to make it very rigid. Also, you're also losing some level of so many times vagueness is also helpful as a in a project, because if it's too rigid, you don't have room to improvise. So in my style, at least, I'm more focused on the spirit of the project and the relationship with the customer. That it's because like it's it's very hard to document what people expect and what that means in terms of execution. So it's like it's more of the while all this documentation is helpful for the rational part of project management, there's also this more like undocumentable part of simply building that relationship with the customer and knowing how to satisfy the stakeholders of the project beyond the documentation. And see, all this documentation are simply tools to achieve those things, which is ultimately to make your customers happy.
I don't disagree with you, but I think it's not sustainable because I don't know how it is in your country, but I can tell you for a project I've done in France, in UK, in Germany, in USA, in Japan, in Korea. Well, okay, that's a little bit all. Now, what I learned is first the customer they want to have the maximum from you, and the maximum means you make zero profit, so it's not desirable. And the second thing is if you are not doing things right, they are going to put pressure on you until you do it right, and the cost and the deficit, the loss of money will be huge.
Yep.
So I mean, I've seen projects which cost at the end 3, 4, 5 times what we charged. So just to give you an idea of how
Yeah.
huge can be the loss. So having good relationship, having a good understanding, dealing with the subjective part, all this is good. But at some stage, you need to be able to formalize what works. And it's a knowledge base inside your organization to document what worked well and not.
Yep. Yeah, I think I should put a section in this book as well on the different environments where you do projects. I think I mentioned it somewhere because in this case, there's a lot of emphasis or there's a lot of need for the for a contract and for documentation and setting the right expectations
Being cut.
because yeah, It's a
Well,
adversarial relationship. No, so it's very different
so,
between your. It's very different. I think so. We're talking about. I'm trying to figure out what's the difference in our approaches and what the difference in environments. It's like most of my projects have been like within an organization, and in your case, it's between organizations. So in that case, it's like a government contract. So very thick documents ensuring that there's like everything is documented. So low trust environments versus high trust environments. So yeah, so if you're working in low trust environment, definitely you need to do a lot of work in terms of documentation. Everything is set, expectations are set. uh, you know, Protecting yourself against scope creep, all these other things. So
yeah,
it's
you need to have some tools. You can have a good trust and have a very good relationship with the customer, but it's an arm trust. You
Mhm.
see, it's like sitting on a table and you enjoy having a good glass of tea or a good cup of tea if you are in Japan, or a good beer, and everybody's happy. But everybody knows that on the side you have a large sword. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
and the sword is there. It means if we start to disagree, you are not going to be the victim of it,
yep, yep.
and they know it. And now when you say everything is documented, I don't agree. You can have, let's say you take your checklist before of the, let's go back to the microphone. Okay, you can have a page on Rome which is setup of the microphone, and the page is empty. It doesn't matter so much. What is important is that the page is ready to collect all the small details
Mhm.
that happened during the project. Because in a typical project, let's say 20 years ago, the lesson learned would be something that happened at the end. At the end is almost too late, because you have already another project that has
Yeah,
started the business by somebody else using the same procedures. So why wait in the
yeah,
end of the lesson? Best do it almost continuously. And with a system which is able to aggregate the knowledge dynamically, it's possible to build the big documentation, to build it from zero and to slowly grow it from experience.
yeah.
So it's not as much an effort. It could be very much like you could have maybe on the setup microphone, you would see a microphone has been set up by Khalil in the project ZZ001 on year 2019, and the quality was good. So it's not documented, but now you have a go-to person. You can go and call Khalil and say, Khalil, how did you do for this setup of this microphone? And now you can, at the last moment, extract the knowledge by maybe just recording a Zoom call between you and this guy, and you attach the recording to the page, and that's done. That's enough. For me, it's the knowledge extraction has been done, and it's
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
So we have a lot of solution between a huge documented project upfront and zero documentation. We have now, with the new tools we have a flexibility between the two, which did not exist in the past.
Yeah. So in the next session, we'll be talking about actually something or thinking about that in a systematic way. So how will we actually run this project? So that's one of the key questions as well. Like, is this a high trust or low trust project, or do you need a sword in this project? Yeah, or what? How big is the sword that you need for this project? So
Yeah,
that's
it's
gonna
more how
be
big.
this is gonna be like for that project management plan, which we'll be tackling next week. Any other comments, Bruno, or questions?
It's okay.
Cool, cool.
It's okay.
All right, so
Can you send me a recording with the questions, with the discussion we had at the end?
that is one. Yes, yes, I'll send this to you. Yep. All right, so I'll be posting this and sending this to you and posting this in YouTube. All right, so I'll see you in next week, Bruno. So we're